So age 9, watching my parents clean up the lawn every week was something that I always begged them to do, and I was way too little, couldn't even see over the handlebar of the push mower. And I think when I was 10, I started push mowing the lawn with my dad. You know, he'd walk alongside of me and help me learn how to use it and not chop my feet off. And I think right around that same time, the next door neighbor was using a service, wanted me to start push mowing, and I was charging $15 a cut. And that really kind of got me going. You know, it was cool to be able to do something I liked and get paid for it. My name is Tanner Kennison. I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm 26 years old, currently living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my business is GreenSpace Lawn Care, Inc. I think the biggest thing that we enjoy about the Wrights is the stand-on model. You know, standers are just increased visibility. You can fit more on a trailer. They're lighter. I think the thing I love the most is the motor is moving with the deck. So as you lower the deck, the machine's center of gravity is lowering. So you can put that thing on a hill that really nothing else is gonna get on, and it really handles it well. When I purchased my first new commercial mower, I think I was around 50 accounts. This was right around the same time I incorporated. You know, there were a lot of moving parts at that time and a lot of hiccups, a lot of things getting broken and messed up, and a lot of that was used equipment giving up on me. So 2017, I bought a Wright 48-inch ZTO. I ran that mower up until just last year, sold it to a friend, and that little thing carried me through the beginning and really never quit. Our service area is predominantly South Charlotte. We operate in maybe a 15-mile bubble. You know, our outlier properties are about 20 minutes apart, maybe 25 minutes. Every year the traffic gets worse, but we maintain about 240 properties. Not everything is full service. There's definitely accounts that we just spray. I got my pesticide license in 2017, and that was a huge add-on to the mowing services we were offering. It was really tough to maintain a weekly schedule for somebody when they didn't have nice grass to cut. We've got 13 employees that are full-time. Try to carry them through the whole year. You know, every year we add 1 or 2 employees. This year I added 3. And we run 5 trucks. Usually 4 will go out each day. And most of that is mowing. That is what keeps us the busiest. Our service list includes mainly maintenance. We're not a hardscape company. We don't build really anything. We focus on mowing, pruning, mulch, and pine needles. We do all the chemical treatments, so everything from aeration and seeding, fertilizer, weed control, fungicide, insecticide. You know, pretty much everything that you would need to keep your fescue lawn in shape is what we've tried to narrow in and focus on. So I used to be very open with who I would work for. Pretty much if you called me, I was gonna be there, and just started to get pickier as we grew and realized that not every client is a good fit. But now we've gotten to the point where we will only do fescue grass. And at this time, if I'm gonna pick something up, it needs to be an acre or larger, and ideally, pretty spread out, wide open. We really like property that we can put a larger mower on. So I've got, I believe, 8 trailers, about 60 still units, about 16 mowers, 10 of those are Wrights. We've got 4 aerators, and then kind of all the little odds and ends that you need to offer some of the seasonal services. When I realized I needed an employee, I think I was cutting about 20 lawns a week, and I was also running, I was doing scouting. I'm an Eagle Scout. I was doing swim team and very involved in church. And it was just getting to the point where I could not finish everything, working every day after school till dark and working on the weekends, trying not to work on Sundays, but I would just kind of reached a breaking point. And honestly, every time I've hired someone, I've just kind of gotten to a breaking point. I'm like, it's time. So I hired my first employee still under the table in high school, and he's actually still with me. Glenn has been there since I was 16, probably 16 or 17. And I'm 26 now. So we've been together a long time, and I would just text him his hours, Venmo him every single day. And then in 2017, I became a corporation. We filed as an S Corp January of 2017. And that was kind of the result of me trying to go to college and realizing that that was not going to be where I would be happy. And from 2017 to now, 2023, I've tried to add between 1 and 3 employees a year. So the biggest thing that has really driven me to purchase new equipment is just the longevity of pretty much everything on the market. It seems like things just do not last as long as they used to. And something I may have been able to get 5 or 6 years out of now might only last us 2 years. So we've tried to identify when a machine is going to give up and hopefully get rid of it before we have some costly repairs. But overall, Wright has stood up the best to what we throw at it, and that's why we continue to choose those mowers. And this has been a progression over the years, but downtime is the biggest headache and just a pain for running a business. You're trying to maintain a schedule, especially in the business that we're in, where everything is on a weekly basis. One day of missed mowing really throws you off. So having equipment that's leaking oil and failing on you, won't start, really can become problematic. So my first mower was a Snapper Pro, and it was definitely not a full commercial unit, kind of middle of the road, and I had more issues out of that little Snapper than anything. And in 2016, I went to our local dealer, Interstate Supply, and I demoed my first Wright, and the controls, the stability, the power, everything was just night and day compared to that Snapper. And that was when I really decided that, yes, this machine is way more expensive than what I'm used to, but I knew it was going to last me longer and do a much better job. And I wanted to be a landscaping company that stood out and really provided quality work, and having the right equipment is the way to do that. Everybody that works for me loves these stand-ons. I do own one ZXT, not knocking the ZXT, but nobody favors it over a stander. The stand-on design is really ahead of its game. Especially here in North Carolina, we've got a lot of hills, we get a lot of rain, and having a lightweight machine that can tread through water, climb a hill, and safely be operated is important. So here in North Carolina, during the spring, lately we've had about 2 days of rain per week, and our routes run Monday to Friday. We try to leave Saturday really, really light, use it as a day to catch up. And if you're using 0 turns all week, you've got to get back out there the day after it's rained. And having a machine that's just too heavy really will damage fescue. Fescue is not a very traffic tolerant grass. It will withstand a lot, but when you're mowing after some rain, it's definitely tough to get a heavy machine in there. Another reason that we love the standers is their capability on a hill. It used to be I would push mow every single hill we encountered because nothing else could handle it. So we've really loved the standers, and they fit this environment pretty well. Wright has always been awesome about warranties, especially with these new machines. Recently, Wright has switched to fuel-injected engines, and there's bound to be some quirks, especially with as many mowers as they make. But they're always awesome to approve a warranty and get back to you quickly. They never leave you stranded, and it's a very good company to work with. Our local dealer, Interstate Supply, has been with me since my very first mower. Joshua over there is a good friend of mine, and an awesome mentor and just somebody I look up to. And they've always been there to help us keep things running. If we're in a pinch and something needs to be fixed quickly, they're always on top of it. Over the years, I've had a lot of different pieces of equipment until we finally found Wright and realized that this was a really good piece of equipment. But it's been tough to have things go down and be waiting on them and try to explain to a customer why we're not there and why the lawn doesn't look as good this week because we were using a backup. But Wright's always been great about making the repair process pretty painless. Parts are readily available on just about anything, even something as major as a whole motor or an entire transmission. We can usually have parts in a day or two, and most of the time things aren't down longer than 3 days, give or take. Having a reliable piece of equipment is the key to being able to stay on top of a schedule and have your customers continue to choose you. You may have them under an annual agreement or annual contract, but if you're dropping the ball and not maintaining a schedule, you can quickly lose a client. And we found that Wright has really helped prevent things like that, building a mower that can really withstand anything. If I could go back and restart everything again, I definitely would have offered less services and taken on less work at one time. Burnout is a very real thing. I've been there more times than I can count. And the more times you burn yourself out, the less you start to enjoy it. So my advice to anybody that is wanting to get into this business or really any other service business is take your time. Things don't need to happen overnight or don't even need to happen in 5 years. You can make gradual progress, be the tortoise and not the hare.